Dr. Nikki Savvides, welcome to the Trash Talk Experience. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
We're doing well. I was like I do a little bit of research like when someone jumps on. So I was trying to like piece together what I would do when you came on. I would try to describe you. And then I'm like, you're either an author, you're a researcher, you're an animal welfare expert, you're a conservationist, and many, many more things probably. Would you attach anything more onto those things, or
Professor?
That's a fine description. And a professor.
No longer a professor. Luckily, I really do not enjoy teaching very much in the university context. I love teaching in the field and educating about wildlife stuff and conservation in Thailand, which I did for a while. But yeah, that covers a lot of it. Animal welfare, conservation, but mainly an author and a writer and a researcher.
At this stage of your career?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
I gotta say, uni kids would be terrible to teach.
Yeah, it can be really tough. A lot of like long silences and rolled eyes and confusion.
We're not that far removed.
What course
from
did you
uni,
teach in uni?
I used to teach animal studies, which was awesome and very engaging.
What part? Like, was it like a subject, or was it like?
Yeah, it was a subject in the Faculty of Arts at Sydney Uni. So that was great, actually. That was really fun. Before that, I taught media and popular culture, which was all right.
Yeah.
And then a few years ago, I tried to do social policy, which is not my area of expertise. And that was a bit tough.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
And now you have a book out,
And now I have a book out.
and that is titled,
It's called After the Forest, Thailand's Captive Elephants and Their People.
that's a big outful, but like it's kind of like explains everything that you covered in another assuming. Yeah.
And like all good academic books, it's got a start. It's a two-part title.
Right.
Academics love a two-part title. So,
Okay.
yeah. But it covers everything the book's
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Obviously the title of the book, and like straight away my mind jumped to the question that I had in mind, which I pitched to you when we were discussing, is why are animals still held in captivity, and what would your explanation for that be?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's such a massive, complex topic. And I guess, elephants is a good place to start, as you were kind of saying before. Like a lot of people, when they think about animals in captivity, they do think of large animals, large mammals, particularly the charismatic animals, of which elephants are probably the most well-known. They're used in conservation efforts for a reason, because so many people identify with elephants. So I think at the same time, people are bothered by elephants being in captivity because they are these majestic, graceful, intelligent, beautiful, large animals that we'd like to imagine being in the wild. So a lot of my research has been understanding elephant captivity in Thailand specifically, and how to improve the conditions of captivity. So, I mean, when you think of the most straightforward, basic answer to why elephants are in captivity in Thailand is that they have had a use for humans. And that use has ranged from, we're talking historically here, like up to 1,000 years ago, even longer perhaps, warfare, logging, civilization building, transport, and another major one was spiritual ceremonies.
Right.
So for all these
that
reasons.
include spiritual ceremonies.
So for Indigenous tribes in Thailand, elephants are really, really important. And they're, these tribal groups have sort of animistic traditions. So they're very much connected to nature, to animals, to trees, to plants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So elephants fit
So
with
you
that
basically
worldview.
mostly research in Thailand per se.
Yeah, all my stuff about elephants is all specifically
What
Thailand.
about problems of elephants in Singapore or some other country? Africa, for example. Would it be similar, or would it be?
No, it's very different in Africa because the Asian elephant is a lot smaller and potentially, especially the female, is more docile than the African elephant.
Mm-hmm.
Africa for me is a completely
different,
unknown quantity.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you're saying like all these historical things that have happened, but now it's mostly for just like entertainment or tourism, I'm assuming. It's not so much for the other things you were mentioning.
Yeah, so largely tourism now. But because elephants have been in captivity for such a long time, it's kind of been an evolution of use. So the reason that they're in tourism now is not just that tourists want to see them and interact with them, which is like, most tourists to Thailand want to interact with or see elephants in some way. But these elephants that are currently working in tourism are all either previously logging elephants or are the descendants of elephants that were caught from the wild decades, centuries ago. So there has been a shift in use more so than tourism has sprung up to use elephants. That's happened too.
Yep.
But it's a shift in use as well.
And so have those factors, are they characterized by those factors? Like, do they have certain personality traits? Like, are they more docile and stuff because of that?
It's a bit of a combination.
Okay.
So mainly female elephants are used in a lot of tourism sites because they are more docile. The males are more aggressive, and they also go into a period called must, which is a hormonal period where they're particularly aggressive. So it is more female elephants, but there's kind of a combination. You've got elephants who have been in captivity for a long time, who are used to humans, who are used to living in a village situation, that kind of stuff, unfortunately needing to be chained up.
Yeah.
But you also have elephants who are made more aggressive by keeping them in particular situations.
And what's the life expectancy? You go ahead.
Why would you need aggressive elephants? Like
to fight, I assume.
No, you don't. There's just males, bull elephants. Bull elephants is just their nature is aggression, especially in the period of must. So, you don't really know what you get when you're breeding elephants, and there's a big argument to not breed any more elephants. But yeah,
they're not endangered by any means right now.
The Asian elephant is endangered. Yeah.
By Asian, you mean Thai, or is it different kind of Asians, like Vietnamese elephants?
So they're all from the same. They're all Asian elephants, but yeah, you have the Thai elephant, the Indian elephant, the Sri Lankan elephant,
and they have
some in Borneo.
Are they distinctive, or was it noticeably different?
No, they're all basically the same family. Yeah.
Okay. And did they originate from one country and they were transported across Asia? Is that how it would
they're
have been?
native across South and Southeast Asia. Yeah.
And what's the life expectancy of a elephant?
They're doing pretty good to get past 70, particularly in.
No, I thought that would be a lot less.
Usually, the ones who, if they haven't had a great life in captivity, they'll die younger.
So in Pakistan, we're from Pakistan, and in our city there used to be a pair of elephants, and in the zoo. And they used to sit on the elephants. They used to give around a touring situation, but then the guy died. So the female committed suicide. She stopped eating food and she stopped drinking water, and she committed suicide.
Oh no!
So we are elephantless now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
those are the only elephants.
Those are two on the and yeah, pretty much.
Who's that famous American personality? Cher.
Cher.
She came to Pakistan, I'm pretty sure, for rescuing either tigers or elephants. I wasn't sure.
She rescued an elephant called Kavan.
I'm
pretty sure that was her involvement. And he was a bull elephant.
Yeah.
He got taken to Cambodia. Cambodia Wildlife Sanctuary.
This is colonization back.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Have we seen examples of captivity? That's why I presented the idea of zoos, because those are the only ones that come to mind.
Yeah.
I've traveled a bit in the Philippines, and they have animals over there that are just used for tourism and entertainment purposes, and similarly they are kept trapped and chained up and so on. In Pakistan we have something called chiriyaghars, which are essentially where it translates to just being bird houses, but bird houses just incorporate all sorts of animals, and it's every community or every town has one where it's a big oval which is open, full of grass, and on the edges of it there's just essentially cages where animals are sitting. And 90% of them are not native to Pakistan. They're bought from outside. And each community has one. So you just go, and the expectation is the community sees these animals, gets joy out of them, pet them or whatever the case is, and then go. So those are the examples that I've seen presented to me. But I think what you're talking about is slightly different animals, like the elephants that are kept in captivity in Thailand. It's not zoo purposes, it's slightly different.
Yeah, so there are definitely zoos in Thailand that keep elephants. I haven't actually visited any of those because my focus has been tourist camps. The camps are the places where tourists basically go to ride elephants and watch them in shows and those kind of situations. And so those camps have come under fire. I mean, we're going back a couple of decades now. Things have changed a lot. For pretty serious welfare issues and inhumane conditions and that sort of thing. And but there's been a real shift in the past 2 decades.
Who has
towards-
initiated this shift? Is it like Thai government itself, or is it just animal right people?
Conservationists and welfare people in Thailand and internationally.
Sure.
So
So there are
there's-
local Thai people that care about this.
There's a woman called Sangduan Chailet, also known as Lek, and she has been responsible for a big part of the movement.
Yep.
And she is from one of the tribal groups in Thailand who grew up with elephants and animals and became passionate. So she and other Thai people, along with international welfare and conservationists, have kind of worked together to improve the situation,
Yep.
which has meant not just sort of encouraging those traditional camps to become more welfare centric
Yep.
and more concerned about the animals, but also creating more ethical tourism ventures
Yep.
around volunteer tourism and sanctuaries mainly, which is
Right.
my area of research.
Coincidentally, I'm actually planning a trip to Thailand in a couple
Mhm.
weeks, and I came across an ethical. It's like an ethical tourist spot where you bathe and I think feed elephants.
Mhm.
Is that, as far as you're aware, like completely ethical? Like there's not really any issues with.
Yeah,
that
let
sort
him know
of
now so he can
attraction?
change his plan if it's not ethical. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, because that kind of tourism has become the new thing,
Yeah,
there are places that are more ethical that are doing that, and then there's places that are.
so it's kind of a case by case.
So you got to ask
It's a
consent
case by
first.
case. But
Yeah.
the way you can really usually tell, and you might need to do a bit of research,
Mhm.
is how many people are around the elephant,
Okay.
the sort of enclosures and that kind of thing. Because if you found a situation where around one elephant there's 30 people washing the elephant, feeding the elephant,
Yep.
getting in too close,
Yep.
that's a probably less ideal example
Okay.
of what you want to go for. But there's other places that are doing pretty good to have small numbers of tourists, so they're not crowding
Okay.
the elephants and that kind of
Okay.
thing. So, but the good thing to know is that the proliferation of these kind of places,
Mhm.
where it's about feeding and washing, has been part of this shift away from riding and circuses and shows.
Okay.
Right.
So really, in theory, they're all doing something that's an improvement on
Yeah.
the majority of traditional camps. Yeah.
What it was. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that you don't cover like zoos, you're more into like these camps that are there, but this is like a generic question. Like what is your opinion on zoos in general? Like what is the benefit of even having a zoo? And,
I did actually do a little bit of a study on zoos for my PhD. I did a bit of research in Bali about zoos and conservation parks there.
Mhm.
And I was looking, like it was only a really small study and it was a long time ago now, but I was really interested in finding out whether people gained conservation awareness from visiting zoos or whether it was more just a sort of day of entertainment.
Yep.
But probably in more depth than my own research, like a lot of the research that I've read, it's this kind of balance between conservation education, raising funding for conservation as well, because a lot of zoos, like including Taronga, have amazing conservation programs. And then the welfare of the animals that are kind of standing in for the animal being conserved.
Yep.
So, for example, you might have, we'll just use elephants in Taronga Zoo. I think they've got 6 Thai elephants there,
Okay.
or maybe 4. Haven't been for a while, but those elephants being there, it's not, the most amazing life for an elephant living in a zoo.
Yeah.
Does the sacrifices to their welfare balance out the conservation education that people will get from visiting the zoo?
So
Mm.
this is because we did go to Taronga Zoo as a group together recently.
We went to the double one though.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
feel like I learned nothing apart from the heat and stuff and just riding motorcycle, just cycling around.
It was
the place.
we
Mm.
essentially just went for a bike ride because they give free bike rides. It's so big that you can just ride around. We saw all the animals. It was so
Mm.
hot. Half of them were just like, poor animal was just lying around, and we're like, I don't even feel good looking at them while they're just sitting there. So
We did ride up in tiger, by the way.
yeah.
Oh,
We
really?
So
were
we
trying
had
to
this-
get some
There's a
response
lie,
out of
yeah.
them, but then
Mm.
we're just like, what's the point of us being here? Yeah.
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 But it's funny, right? Because at Dubbo Zoo, they've got a lot of space.
Yeah.
So you might not see them. I've never been to Dubbo Zoo, but you might not see them, I'm assuming, because they've got a lot of space. Whereas somewhere that's a smaller,
So the one in
Zoo.
Sydney, Taronga,
mm,
they have 6 elephants.
yeah, I don't know if it's 6, it might be 4.
So
they
I'm trying
came
to
from
struggle.
Thailand.
The one in Double was massive, so I'm
Yeah.
guessing that would have 6, and it wouldn't
They
surprise
probably
me.
would have that.
They had
yeah.
13 different type of rhinos.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I didn't even know these many existed. But as you said, I don't know the cost benefit analysis or like the comparison of like how much are people learning from this and how much are we actually helping the animals, I don't see it being balanced in the favor of the animal at all.
What did you like when in your research? What were your findings?
So I mean, it's quite a different situation, I guess, in Southeast Asia. So this was in Bali. You know, obviously, socioeconomically, somewhere like Australia is a bit different to Indonesia, but the zoos and conservation parks I visited were pretty high standards welfare-wise.
Yeah.
Like I felt going to them like it wasn't some of those zoos you hear about that are truly awful in, you know, developing nations. So what I used, obviously I spent a day each at these places and had the experience of being a tourist to see, you know, what I enjoyed and what I learned and all that sort of stuff. And then I also interviewed, I think it ended up being about 60 people about their experiences.
Yep.
And I wanted to kind of use various questions to find out like what ultimately did they enjoy about their experience and what did they learn about their experience.
Okay.
But what I found was that while quite a lot of people had learned about conservation, the bigger thing that they always all brought up and were concerned about was the welfare of the animals.
Yeah.
So, you know, animals in small cages, animals in the heat, without enough water, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, as I was saying, it was a really small study, but it was kind of something that was
I don't
in
even
my mind.
like, I know we do studies like that kind of thing. I don't know it requires a study. You can just see the condition of an animal because I've been to a zoo 4 times in my life. Last time we went was the Dubbo one. Before that, I've been to one in Pakistan. I've been to obviously Taronga Zoo in the city and once in the Philippines. And every time I've been, I've never had like a pleasant experience. And I don't see how people will have a pleasant experience.
I think it's just the heat, bro. Like, honestly, if it was a nice, beautiful day, you would...
No, like, but if you're looking at an animal that's just caged up, and if it was out, it would probably
eat you,
beat you up and eat you. Like, you don't even like feel like the animal is in its natural habitat. If you want to enjoy it, like they have the African safaris and so on, that might be a more realistic experience. And I don't know, like, are they drugged to an extent, the animals in the zoo, to like act a bit?
I wouldn't say that like here they would do that.
Yeah.
I'd hope not in most places. I'm sure in
Probably
dodgy, like literal dodgy places, like there's at least one zoo I know in Thailand.
Because I know in the Philippines, as I was saying, like like people were approaching this like tiger and it was chained up obviously, but I'm like, it must be on something for it to not react if people are touching him.
Tigers
what if it's well fed? Would it still attack people?
If what, sorry?
If it's well fed, it's got all the food it needs.
I don't know, but I know that the tiger temples and that kind of place in Thailand,
they're drugged.
They are drugged,
Yeah.
I actually did a bit of Googling about you to sort of prep for this podcast. And I came across a snippet that you were being charged at by a bull elephant.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to know what led up to that, how you felt during it and how that went.
Yeah.
That would be a very scary, like, I shit my pants type moment.
Sure. Pretty much, yeah. And I think my publisher wanted that as like the blurb on the back of the book because I was like...
So you didn't read the book itself?
Well, because it was funny because I was like, I could put a nice story about how lovely everything was. And then he was like, well, think about like the one thing that people would go, whoa,
I guess
that's
it
like crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane. So I was like, all right, okay, we'll go with that. Yeah. So basically what happened was I was working on a community-based welfare and conservation project in Bantar Klang, which is a small village in northeast Thailand, and that's the place I did most of my research.
Gotcha.
Long-term field work there. And part of my job, as well as education and that sort of stuff and volunteering generally, was cleaning elephant shelters. So that's something I would do every morning, was walk from each shelter to the next and clean them out and, you know, get ready for the elephants to be brought in for the day from outside in the village. And one day when I was walking from one shelter to the next and I had my rake on my shoulder and there was a mahout, these are the guys who look after the elephants, a mahout and a giant bull elephant with these massive, like the tusks, the ends of the tusks, they'd been cut off.
Yeah.
But the ends of the tusks were like this long. Well, probably half a meter long tusks.
Yep.
And circumference, like, that size, like the size of a small log, basically.
Wow.
And I'm just, you know, I'm used to just being around elephants all the time, just walking over. And then suddenly he just went like this and then head down straight towards me.
Holy
and
shit.
I was like, holy fuck. And I just grabbed my rake and I like hid behind a tree, a very narrow tree, and I was just there shaking. And then somehow the mahout just calmed him down and they just walked past. But
Wow.
he got very, very close.
So elephants can't be pets. Not pets, but like they can recognize you. They can be nice to them, and they can still mess you up.
Yeah, but I didn't know this elephant.
Sure,
I hadn't
okay, so
seen
it's
him
a random
before.
one.
Yeah, hadn't seen him before. I had a rake over my shoulder. Who knows what he thought that was? So
Sure.
There's a Simpsons episode where like Bart gets an elephant and then he just keeps it as a pet, and then the pet it does the same thing at the end. It's like for a wedding for Apu or something,
remember
and it charges everyone at the end. So it's like I don't think so. You can keep it as a pet.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you were talking about mahouts. Can you please explain like the relationship between a mahout and a elephant that it like looks after, that a person looks after?
Yeah, for sure. So the mahouts I worked with were mainly from the Goi tribe, and they have about 1,000-year ancestral history working with elephants. In those sort of early days of capturing elephants from the forest, they caught them to sell, to use for transport, for various purposes, and also the spiritual ceremonies that we were talking about before. And then the relationship between the mahout and the elephant is basically has been described to me by a lot of them as like a family member. So the mahout can be like, you know, the elephant, I should say, could be the mahout's child or sister or brother or...
They would never charge the mahout.
They could,
okay,
they
sure.
could. Yeah.
Family problems.
They're still, they're still almost wild animals. And the main problem is bulls. It's the bulls that, I mean, females can be...
Is sterilizing
unpredictable too.
elephants a thing, or it's never been a thing?
No, it's not a thing. No.
Okay, I was trying to visualize it, but I don't even know what they end up looking like. So
Yeah.
we'll
So
skip this
a
one.
mahout is essentially like, I thought it was more like it's not like are they allowed to be strict, or are they strict with the elephant as
Yeah.
well? Like it's a more disciplinary
Well,
position?
they're a caretaker.
Right.
And just like, you know, different parents or different pet owners, there are people who treat their children or animals better than others. So one thing I wanted to do in my research was to be really careful about making generalizations about people, because a lot of mahouts get a bad name because, you know, there are, you know, some instances of cruelty that people have seen and videoed and shared and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And that sort of paints everyone with the same brush.
Gotcha.
Whereas there are also plenty of people who really, really care about their elephants and have also basically suffered from exactly what has made their elephants' lives difficult, which is deforestation and the loss of habitat. Because for a lot of these mahouts who are from indigenous tribes, the forests were just as much their home as the elephants. So the removal of the forests and, you know, the sort of the homeland of indigenous people, along with the habitats for these animals that are really important to them spiritually, has had a massive impact on them. And some of them have, you know, they've managed to hang on to really kind, gentle methods as much as they can, and others have, you know, they've struggled with this enormous change to their lives. And then, of course, you also have mahouts who are in it for a job.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, who
So
might not
they
have...
see it as like a financial benefit to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's either a financial benefit or a potential financial burden, because for the guys who are really, really passionate about elephants, and, you know, I've had them say to me, you know, like, oh, without elephants, you know, we wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But for them, it's like it could cost them more to keep the elephant than what they would actually be making from the elephant.
Right.
I see.
So it's actually...
Do elephants feed off the land, or they need special sugarcane stuff?
Most of them, so say in the village where I was working, which has been completely deforested, it's almost entirely bought food. So sugarcane, fruit and vegetables, grass. They do plant fields there.
Yeah.
So they can eat grass per se.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Napier grass specifically.
Also, I'm assuming it's Asian elephants. I also read that they eat like 150 to 200 kilos a day.
Yeah.
That is a shitload of sugarcane and grass.
Yeah, it's a huge amount.
Wow.
And if you like, how many mahout, like how many elephants does one mahout or a community have?
So the village that I did my research at that time, there were about 200 elephants in a pretty
imagine
small
feeding
village.
200 elephants, and if each of them are eating 150, you said.
Yeah, about 150 to 200.
That's insane. And sorry, when you say a village, is it like, you know, like 50 people, or are we talking a couple hundred? Or a couple thousand?
No, we're talking a couple of thousand.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
But unfortunately,
lot.
during COVID, because all forms of tourism stopped, a bunch of people and elephants who were working in tourist camps came home to the village because they lost their jobs.
Right.
And then they had 500 elephants in the village
Wow.
to feed with no forests and no money, basically.
And as you said, like they treat them as part of their family, so it's not like you can abandon these elephants. Like you have to.
Yeah, and one interesting thing, because I was talking to John Roberts, he's the co-director of the Golden Triangle Asian Elephant Foundation that does amazing work in across the Golden Triangle area. And he said, you know, one interesting thing he saw through COVID was that no one abandoned their elephants of like I don't know about the non-traditional, non-Indigenous mahouts, but he found that interesting that no one abandoned their elephants during that time.
Yeah. So like when it comes to, as you said, like non-traditional, that's when it's become more commercialized. Like those are probably the ones I'm imagining are used for like tourism and entertaining purposes and like used in these camps that you were talking about. Is that the biggest point of concern, or it is still like the traditional people not being able to take care of the elephants? That's the bigger concern.
It's a combination, because it's the Indigenous people and the traditional caretakers who are moving to tourist camps, or originally did in the 90s when deforestation became a massive thing, to find work, basically. Yeah. So they've been pushed into that industry and are reliant on it. So they've basically moved into that as a way to make money and to, you know, provide for their families and their elephants.
Yep.
But then this sort of burgeoning industry of tourism around elephants that's sort of grown since, you know, over the past several decades, has encouraged people.
How big of a problem is it? Like he was saying, like he wants to go. Trey wants to go to. Like how much, like tourism going and people, you know, visiting these places. How much of a like, is there a financial cost associated with it, or like a number associated with it that you can,
It's the kind of thing where it used to be the number one way that people who went to Thailand saw elephants was in traditional camps.
Yep.
And probably along with zoos as well. But the traditional camps were where you go, you have your ride around the centre, you watch a circus that might involve elephants playing soccer or painting or throwing darts or that kind of thing. And that was the number one way. And now it's shifted a lot. So you've still got, well, you know, COVID's made it.
Have you been to
confusing.
elephant soccer games?
I've seen one.
Because I've seen one too. I don't remember. Were they active? Like, was it a fixed game or they were actively trying?
No, it was completely 100% fixed.
So they like play acting in a way just to entertain the crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes no
sense. I was
sense.
too young for this to remember.
No, but back then you probably didn't think of it as like, this animal suffering or whatever.
Not entirely, nah.
Yeah.
Just curious, this is a question recently came to my mind. Is it common in Thailand for people to eat elephants?
No.
Because it's common in Sydney. Not common, but I've seen 2 restaurants in St. Leonard's. One of them's Royal Colonial Indian Restaurant. They got elephant curry. And there's another restaurant in St. Leonard's. I was looking for food places after gym, and there were 2 restaurants selling elephant curry.
I reckon it's just called that.
I don't think so. It has anything. Like, I've never heard of like elephant.
No.
I know that. But
I know that.
Is it a cuisine thing or
no?
Not at all. Like no one eats elephants.
No, there is a dodgy black market somewhere in the Golden Triangle. I don't remember the name of it. I remember reading an article about it. And they have found elephant meat for sale in this dodgy black market.
Okay.
But not in St. Leonard's, I don't think.
I don't think so. Yeah, it would be allowed. Like, and you just said it now.
I knew that much, but they had elephant curry, and I was kind of intrigued what's inside.
Unless they got these dodgy connections.
yeah, super.
I think it's just in the name. Like,
and then it's like elephant curry, $1,000.
It's not a cuisine thing at all.
No.
Like, not at all.
Not at all, no.
You kind of derailed what we were talking about. What were we talking about? I completely forgot. No. So yeah, tourism and so on. So when it comes to like say Australians going there and you know rest of the world going there, how much is that like affecting what, like, is that the biggest issue that those elephants will be facing, like just them being used for, you know, tourism purposes?
Well, COVID's been interesting because as much as we were all concerned about the use of elephants in tourism before COVID, what COVID's shown is the reliance of elephants on tourism, because you take away tourism and suddenly the people who rely on it are starving, which means how do they feed their elephants? So that's why I'm so focused on ethical tourism, because that's the way that we can fix the problems, which is, okay, we've already got all these elephants. A lot of the people who are looking after them are not going to live that long because their elephants are much younger than they are. So what do you do to provide for this large population? It's, you know, around 4,000 elephants into the future. And the answer is tourism, because, you know, that's one of Thailand's biggest industries.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the easiest way to provide for elephants and mahouts. It just has to be done in a specific way to make sure that welfare is paramount in everything that.
So you're not
is
against
done.
elephant tourism per se. It's just
No.
easy and sustainable, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Sustainable ethical tourism is the key.
And what would be some examples for those? Like, what is ethical tourism?
Okay, so there's a bunch of different types. So sanctuary tourism is pretty big now in Thailand. So that's people who either visit a sanctuary for a day, or they volunteer for a week, or they volunteer for a couple of months. There are places that are more realistically a sanctuary than others, but generally most of them, kind of what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
If they've got less tourists visiting, if they've got more space for elephants, they're generally pretty good.
Yep.
Okay.
You know, there's some might say they're a sanctuary and not strictly be rescuing elephants.
Yep.
But they're probably, you know, they're doing better than, say, a traditional camp.
Yep.
And then there's a bunch of volunteer tourism projects, which is my big passion. So some of those are at sanctuaries, and other there's an amazing sanctuary actually in northern Thailand, Burman Emily's Elephant Sanctuary. That's one I talk about in my book. And that's a really great example of volunteer tourism at a sanctuary, in that you go there, you spend, you know, a week or several weeks there, however long you want, and you spend every day collecting food for the elephants and going for walks on the elephant, with the elephants, not on, going for walks with the elephants.
That's not fun.
It is heaps of fun. It's way better. It's way more interesting, I reckon, than, because
I
you
don't
can.
want to be sitting on an elephant, bro. Like, I have no interest in that.
Yeah, no. I did it once just to see.
Yeah.
And I immediately regretted it. I was like, nope.
Was the experience itself uncomfortable, or were you just uncomfortable with the fact that you were like doing something the elephant may not be happy with? Or
Yeah, I think I had thought about it so much, and all the issues, potential issues, and then but what about, you know, if they're reliant on tourism, then maybe riding's not the worst thing. But
Yeah.
then also I have horses, and like I've had horses bolt on me, and I literally have a bridle and a saddle and, you know, full control.
Yeah.
So sitting on an elephant in just a
So what's the
bench
difference?
seat.
I'm just curious between riding a horse versus an elephant.
Well, for me, it goes from complete control and knowledge with the horse, and complete lack of control and complete. You're a passive passenger. You're literally a passenger on an elephant ride. It's the mahout
You're in
who's
no
controlling
control.
the
Gotcha.
elephant.
Yeah.
But if that elephant took off, which happens on occasion, there's no way you would be able to stop it yourself.
Yeah.
You would be basically stuck up there.
And if you were to fall off and the elephant stepped
Yeah.
on you or something.
Exactly.
That's when it comes to, like, you were mentioning volunteerism, like, is there a cost associated with this, or like it's completely?
No, most of it's paid volunteering.
Yeah.
So most of them charge around $400 a week equivalent, and that goes towards your accommodation and food, mahout wages usually, and elephant food, and sometimes money back to the local villages and that sort of thing.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, like if you want to get something authentic, like if you going to a country, then you want to, like, rather than going to a zoo, getting like 5 minutes with an animal, you get to spend a whole week. You can see how they live, and then you're doing something beneficial at the same time.
Yeah, for me, it's my favorite way to travel.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing my PhD on volunteer tourism because it's just awesome and fun, and you get the full cultural experience, and you get to make friends, not just with like the other volunteers, but the locals, and it's a fantastic way to travel.
What was the most interesting thing you took away from either your research, or I'm assuming you lived around the villages of the mahouts and whatnot as well? What was the most interesting thing you reckon you took away from those experiences?
Well, one thing I didn't expect to come across, and it was the thing that made me think I have to write a book, was that the mahouts were really keen to tell me stories about their history and their culture that they hadn't told many people before, especially not a white person. And so as I started to interview them and learn about these stories, more and more people came and wanted to start talking about all this stuff, and suddenly they were reminiscing and telling all these amazing, fascinating stories that I was just like recording, and I had a bunch of great interpreters.
Yeah.
And having access to all that knowledge and suddenly having all these stories made me think, I have to actually do something with this, like beyond finishing a PhD. And I don't think the book wouldn't be enough without those stories.
Yeah.
It'd be half
if you
the
just
story.
told your own POV, it
would have been boring anyway. But it was interesting because I did have along the way of workshopping the book around. Like I had publishers say like, oh no, it should just be about you and the elephants and how they change your life. And so I always say like they tried to make it into like an eat, pray, love with elephants situation. I was like,
How
nope.
long ago was this whole experience?
I was last there in 2015, so quite a while ago now.
Yeah.
Because right now, if you started your documentation of everything going on, then Instagram, YouTube, you could have so much visual content for people to consume.
Yeah, it was something I didn't think about. I have a lot of photos on Instagram, but it wasn't something I thought about at the time.
It wouldn't be first thought.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing as being a writer, it's like it's all in your mind's eye. But then later I'm like, damn it, I wish I had really great video.
Yeah.
Because I'm intrigued to read your book, but there's so much more to read in life in general. But like visual content is easy to
consume.
It's really
And
easy.
is your book mostly like a research book kind of thing, or is it easy for people to?
It's a story. It's
okay.
a story and stories. Yeah.
For someone not as intelligent as some people can still read.
Yeah,
through
I mean,
it.
it's got what I wanted it to have was, because I am a researcher, like the research that I read, but the stuff that I reference is hard. It's not like full on academic stuff. It's like interesting facts about elephants and conservation, and there's a bit of animal studies in there, which is slightly more academic, but I think people get it because animal studies is all about recognizing that as humans we feel that we're superior to animals, and as a result of that we've had all these terrible things happen to animals basically. So how do we accept that that's the situation, and how do we change that? So that's kind of my academic background.
It would be nice to have a picture book version for Sun so he can also follow.
Like I wouldn't even lie. Like for me, I don't read books much.
Yeah. Well, I kind of wish I could make. I mean, maybe I can make a doco. There is actually a doco about the Mahouts that this awesome guy I met on that project. Actually, the Serene project.
Yeah. What is it called?
Sure,
that's
changing Rains. Changing Rains. Yeah, I'll send you, and you can link it.
Yeah, no
the guy
problem.
Eric Deddle is the director, and that's really cool as well. It actually would be a good compliment to the story.
I did have one question. I think you sort of already answered it. Like, how is your work received by the work that you're trying to do? Obviously, received by the local traditional people. Are they is there some sort of resentment? Why is a foreign person coming in telling us these things, or they're very friendly and accept it?
Yeah, I mean, the guys that I worked with directly were so lovely and welcoming, and just really excited that someone cared enough to write a book and record their stories, because they're pretty far down the line when it comes to the hierarchy and socioeconomic kind of status in Thailand. And it's not like everyone in the village was necessarily wanted to be involved in my project.
Yeah.
And there were definitely people there who I avoided for specific reasons. Mainly, I knew that whatever they were doing with the elephants, I didn't agree with.
Yeah.
But on the whole, everyone I worked with was just super willing to and just really wanted to tell their stories. And they're also very aware that, they get a bad rap, that people just everyone assumes that they're all cruel. And the thing was as well, most of the guys that I interviewed were working on the ethical program project that I was part of. So they were they're kind of the ideal people to shape and reshape the future of elephant tourism.
Yep.
Because they have the history, they have the knowledge, they have the tradition, they have the passion and the care, and they also really, really, really want to make a change. They're in it for much, much more than any money. I mean, they're not making money from it.
Yeah, okay.
I did have a question around obviously there's certain elephant, you can't save all elephants from going through this experience of captivity. There will be some elephants that are used for these horrible instances as well. What sort of issues these animals develop, for one, and is there if they do have these issues, is there a way to help them or cure them as well, or is this once an animal goes into a stage where it can't deal with the captivity, it's no longer
off.
No, I think there's hope for a lot of them, because they end up in sanctuaries, and even if they have to, like Kavan, the elephant who came from Pakistan and was taken to Cambodia, like he was
It
basically.
kind of embarrasses me, bro. Like, why Pakistan?
Why would we let
Why
it go?
would we do it? Yeah, yeah.
Don't.
But I think he was known as the loneliest elephant in the world or something like that.
Mm.
And I don't think he was, I don't know actually that much about whether he was super aggressive or anything. But basically he would have been, you know, pretty difficult case for rehabilitation, I guess. But I think he went to the sanctuary in Cambodia and has done really well. They built him a massive enclosure. He's got his own pool. He's got two neighbours, two female elephants next door. Some of the worst cases that I saw, say in the village, you know, as I said, there's some people I didn't really agree with what they were doing, or definitely didn't agree with what they were doing. Some people, you know, didn't have the money or time to look after their elephants. Some people were purposely neglectful and just didn't care.
Purposely.
Yeah, so didn't matter that the elephant was stuck out in the sun for days and days and days with no access to water.
And these are animals, these are elephants that are just chained up, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they're chained up all the time. I mean, most captive elephants in Thailand are chained up for at least part of the day, and in a place where there's no forest. Then
is the most common like zoochosis which they develop, like is just they're just like chained up so much that it's just like a mental disorder that they develop that can't be cured. Yeah,
because a lot of them get what's called stereotypical behavior, with like trunk swinging and shifting from side to side, which is all just a sign of boredom and stress.
Yeah.
And then there's some, I guess, who, I mean, I haven't met any that you would argue had completely lost it.
Sure.
Yeah, I think there were definitely elephants that were miserable.
Yeah.
And there were also, though, elephants that had really bad stereotypical behavior until they were taken for walks, and then that would stop. So we had some elephants come onto the project who had been chained up a lot, and then the project I worked on was primarily about walking with them, taking them off the chains and walking with them as enrichment, and the stereotypical behaviour improved a lot because of that enrichment.
That's pretty cool.
Walking with them, did you have a leash or something, or like how did you?
No, they just walk, and the mahouts walk with them, and volunteers walk behind and are ready to
like run away.
Yeah.
I think we've been asking too many questions, but like I want to get to like what do you want to get out of the book that you've put out? And please give us more examples of like ethical tourism, what we can like what we can expect and how we can do it. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, the book for me is just about highlighting the issues and raising awareness, and you know, there hasn't been a book about this written yet, so it's always exciting to kind of be first cab off the rank.
Trailblazer.
I'm sure there'll be others that come after this about Thailand specifically, or other places as well. And the Mahout stories obviously were really, really important to tell, especially because their culture is on the decline, and the younger generation are not necessarily, learning the language and all that sort of stuff. So I think I wanted people to be able to read both the animal side of the story and the human side of the story.
How did you get the animal side of the story?
How did I get the animals? Watching, like a lot.
So you know, like
ton of observation.
You know the guy what was Martin Cicero, the dog whisperer guy.
Oh right, yeah.
Have you seen him?
Are you asking if she's an elephant whisperer?
I'm definitely not an elephant whisperer.
Sure.
No, I'm a horse whisperer, but I'm not an elephant whisperer. Sure. No, so it was all observation. So I literally spent multiple hours every day, like at least 4 or 5 hours a day, just watching elephants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And talking to mahouts about elephants, and talking to sanctuary owners and conservationists about their elephants as well.
But if you were to communicate to an elephant, how like are there like cues? Like, you know how like dogs have certain cues, cats don't have any cues actually. Elephants, like what is it like if you're speaking to it, how does it like interact with you?
Well, it's very much the mysterious language between mahout and elephant.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, some sanctuary owners have it, definitely. Yeah. You know, people like Emily and Berm at their sanctuary, and Lek at her sanctuary, and there are other sanctuary operators who, you know, can have this language with their elephants. Yeah. But that language that the mahouts and the elephants share with each other, and you know, a lot in the tribe, the Goi tribe, they have their own words in Goi, the Goi language, relating to commands. Wow. And very different kinds of a lot of commands around training and that sort of stuff as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. That's very interesting.
So Trey is going. Can you recommend some ethical tourism for him?
Are you going to Phuket?
I haven't actually planned the full trip. We're just starting in Chiang Mai, and the rest of it I've left open.
Well, easy. Chiang Mai. There's Elephant Nature Park, which is the kind of original elephant sanctuary up there. But there are also Elephant Nature Park's great.
Yep.
But there are also some smaller projects
Okay.
known as saddle off projects that are also run by Save Elephant Foundation.
Yep.
Which also is, runs or is basically part of Elephant Nature Park.
Mm-hmm.
And they're that sort of, you can go and you can feed the elephants and walk with the
Alright,
elephants
cool.
and wash them.
If people wanted to explore your book and the work that you're doing, where
Mhm.
can they go and what can they visit? Yep.
Yeah, so my website is nikkisavvides.com. So pretty much everything is available via there. I also have a Facebook group, or Facebook page, I should say, which is at After the Forests.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got about a group of 3,000 of us who are, it's my page, but a bunch of people who are really passionate about animal welfare and conservation.
Yep.
I've got a very lonely Instagram page.
Do we all?
It's like got 60 followers or something, which is just photos from
Your
the book,
trips?
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't be bothered with. I was like, Facebook, Instagram, who can be bothered?
So if I want to read your book, I can see you through
You can look
your
at
Instagram.
exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I was like, oh, maybe I can get. I've always wanted to do a book with the coloured plates in the book, and you open
Yeah.
up and there's the section in the middle.
Yeah.
But the
He would really like those. Yeah.
yeah. But the cost of the book would have been insane if I'd
Yeah.
done that. So I thought, okay, we won't do that.
Did you do black and white,
Instagram.
or was it strictly?
No, it's all too expensive.
Yeah,
So
okay.
so I thought Instagram,
Sure. Okay,
Yeah.
Easy.
and that's also at After the Forests.
All right.
But yeah, anything else you wanted to chat about? Like
Uh,
anything we missed from what you wanted to share?
No, I think we covered heaps. Yeah, it was really, really great chat.
Not a
So
problem.
thanks
Thank you for
having me,
coming on.
guys.
Thanks for
Yeah.
Not a problem. Yeah.
Cheers.
Hope
Awesome.
you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did.
Not
Thanks
a
so
problem.
much for having me.
Anyway, guys, thank you very much for listening. Hope you guys learned a lot about elephants or just animals in captivity. And if
In
you want
Thailand.
to, and Thailand in particular, and if you want to explore and see, what is it called? Like sustainable tourism or like
Yeah, ethical tourism.
ethical
Yeah.
tourism, you can check out. I'll put the links in and
Sure.
whatever is
Awesome.
shared. So yeah, anyway, thank you guys for listening. You can watch this on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and follow us on our Instagram and TikTok. And I'll put all of Nikki's various things that you
Social
mentioned as
medias
well
and-
in there as well. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace and bye.